Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Peter Abraham. I'm a second career registered nurse focused in the area of advanced illness, typically those that would qualify for either palliative care or hospice care. Those are two separate services, and I'm a certified end-of-life doula through the International Doula Life Movement. I am also an end-of-life educator, book author, writer. If you're new to this channel, welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time to visit. In this channel, we talk about issues related to death and dying. We are all guaranteed to die. Shouldn't we be more prepared for what we're going to face? And even though we could say we're going to face that eventually, or not this year, or not this decade, we're not in charge of that. And shouldn't we at least know what will happen when the time comes, even if we did have a say? If these are topics that are interesting to you, please consider subscribing, hitting the bell notification below. I try to put out videos every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Occasionally there'll be a gardening or house project update, or like the other week, a tribute to Charlie Kirk, off the normal subject matter, although with Charlie Kirk we are dealing with death and dying. If these are videos that you like, please consider liking. That helps videos like mine on a very small channel. Now, the topic for today's video is going to be looking at the current crisis that has been going on in the field of hospice for at least the past 2 years now. At least the past 2 years, if not longer. And what I believe to be a solution to that crisis. Hospice News, if you don't subscribe to this, I do recommend. This is a rather concise news source for both hospice and palliative care. And before we go into today's topic, I want to ask you, what are you grateful for? Those of you who've been following my channel know that under most circumstances, I'm asking this question so that you, my viewer, who I appreciate and I'm grateful for, can build resilience. How do you deal with death day in and day out? Isn't that depressing? That was just asking. There's a all about death doula Facebook group, and two different hospice nurses asked in the main hospice group in the same week, how do you handle it? Resilience. But you don't just say the word and wow, you have resilience. It's taking steps. It's like going to the gym, which I don't do. But for me, it's 3 steps. We deal with the third pillar here, and that is, what are you grateful for? So number one, I'm grateful for you, my viewers. I'm grateful for my wife, Laura, who puts up with me. I am autistic, and sometimes my autism is not as well regulated as I would love it to be. I'm grateful for those who are buying and reading my books. A gentleman by the name of Keith reached out to me thanking me. He bought my Hospice Conditions of Participation book, uh, and he's sharing that he's working on getting back into the field of hospice after having spending some time. And he thanked me for my book, and that book was inspirational to him. Now, for those of you who read my books, these are nonfiction books. I'm grateful when somebody says they're inspiring, but I write them to help master certain topics. I just put that out there from a word definition perspective. But I'm grateful for Keith and people like Keith that are saying, hey, I bought this book or that book, and it really made a difference in their lives. Now, moving on to the topic of today's video, this was published on September 12th, so that you're aware, for full disclosure, this video is being recorded in advance of its intended publication date. So today is Sunday, September 14th. It's only 2 days after this article, but this video, if all goes well, will be published on Wednesday, September 25th. And I do have to give the fine print that if something happens in between, maybe it gets moved to a later date in September. I don't know. I'm just trying to be transparent with all of you. So part of this article, and I have, by the way, for those if you want to stay in the news, One of the features for Perplexity, I do believe you have to subscribe to the pro model for this, is you could set up tasks. And so I have a daily task. Let me know anything going on in the hospice care, palliative care, end of life doula care, books, articles, and so on. So I get daily updates. Now, there's not always the potential, I shouldn't say there's not always something out daily. There's a potential thereof. But if something comes out, hey, I get notified. And I don't always write articles or consider something for a book based on what I'm reading. But I thought it was very interesting because part of the summary for this, you think a summary like a WordPress excerpt where it gives you like 120, 160 words, concise snippet, was they're pushing for this because of the staffing shortage. Right now, there's nursing shortages worldwide. I live in the state of Kentucky. Kentucky is hit hard. Pennsylvania, where I came from, is hit hard. It's hit hard all over. And so what hospice agencies are now pushing for is they're going back to lawmakers and saying, you know, telehealth served us so well during COVID, which it did. Give us the ability to go back to telehealth again so that we're not, our patients aren't suffering and we're able to stay in business. And so this article, and in the article I wrote, which I'm going to show you in a moment, goes over the benefits, and there are benefits to this. But the caveat for this, the huge, gigantic missing hole, is who's on site with the patient, the caregiver, and the family members. I just read a post this morning. Keep in mind, today is Sunday, September 13th. So that's the date that I read this post. That somebody posted in the main hospice End of Life Facebook group that's very, very active, that they thought hospice was about being there for the family. And they called, and then the family just do this. And I see other posts that the nurse comes in, does their job, and leaves as soon as they can. And I'm not saying this to dismiss or otherwise be negative toward the staff, the nurse, the person, etc. This is what, like, I was put under the pressure for that. Now, I am beyond weird. Those of you who've been watching me for any period of time, I am not normal. I don't claim to be. And from a point of view, I don't want to be. I pushed back against corporate. There were times I got chewed out. Thankfully, I was never written up from a put it in writing perspective. But I was told many times, especially by the one agency, why can't I be like, and I don't want to name the nurse, because her visits were 15 to 20 minutes. She bragged, and I mentioned her in other videos of mine, she bragged that the longest visit on site with the patient and family was 45 because the wife made her. And when I heard that inside my head, I'm exploding because it's like you're bragging about something that is beyond uncompassionate. And the clinical skills through the roof, but wow. The hospice nurses worldwide, especially in the United States, are under pressure. Now, some of them, like me, there's another one, Amanda in Kentucky, pushed back. I'm going to do what's right. I'm going to do what's right no matter what happens to me, because the patient matters more than what you're pushing for. But the catch is not everybody is has the ability to do that, either from a personality perspective, maybe, and it's not like I'm an introvert and under normal circumstances I'm timid and soft spoken, but like don't poke the bear type of thing. And when I say that, not that I'm physically imposing, grandmothers could probably beat the living daylights out of me in any type of fight. And I'm not saying that to be humble. It's just I've never been in shape in my life, nor am I a fighter. Um, and if you read my saved video, there's other issues that I would have if somebody was physically violent with me. Uh, but going forward, it's not always the nurse or the social worker or the chaplain, whoever the hospice nurse is, it's not always them. Sometimes they can't afford to lose their job. They can't afford to push back. And so they go with the status quo. But the catch with the telehealth is that while it has value, no one is there to hold the hand of the patient to hold the hand of a caregiver or family member, pat them on the back and say, I'm here with you till the end or as long as I can. And so this article, even though again I said, today's the 14th, this is going to be published. It'll be available by the time you see this video. But I wrote it today, and it's looking. Please don't laugh with the cat. Love our LOVART.com. And I did go back and forth anthropomorphizing. You didn't get the first image right. AI. But I wrote this article about how, and let me get to the top here, how end-of-life doulas collaborating with hospice, vice versa, we bridge the gap in so many different ways. A lot of end-of-life doulas will say, I've been telling my hospice and palliative care agencies we bridge the gap. But prior to this push for telehealth, and even myself, I'm guilty of this, we bridge the gap for when they're on site, which we do because they're in and out, most of them. And we supplement what they're trying to teach. We reinforce what they're trying to teach. We lift them up. We're not dissing them for being in and out, but we have to live with the reality that they're in and out. We're going to fill in the gap. We're going to hold that spot on the dam that's nearly bursting. But with telehealth, it gets even worse because there's no one on site. So we have this crisis, and I do have links below for where this data comes from for the percentages. But it is huge. This is a big issue. I know that Shelley and Adam Henry from the Amity Group, I admire them so much. They have been advocating for hospice staff for years. They're the only hospice-only staffing agency that I'm aware of in the U.S., and they do a wonderful job. And they don't just accept anyone. You have to have that hospice heart and be properly trained. And they work so hard to make the lives of hospice nurses like me, even though right now, and by the time you're watching this, I may be back working part-time, not sure, in hospice. I have a second interview on Monday, September 15th. So I will see. I'm not going to go back and edit this particular video, by the way, to give the news. I'll give it via other venues. And God is in charge. And it's what he wants, not what I want. His will be done. So telehealth, that provides a Band-Aid. But the missing piece is we who are end-of-life doulas can be that on-site presence. And while end-of-life doulas, and let me get over here. Give me one moment. I know I'm going fast. Again, it's going to be in writing when you... Okay. So then end-of-life doulas, I know what one is. I just wanted a screen so you could read. So an end-of-life doula, under normal circumstances, which is the overwhelming majority, the overwhelming majority, are non-medical support personnel. You do not need a medical background. By the way, if you have a heart to be an end-of-life doula, you do not need to have a medical background. Just like with a hospice nurse, you don't have to have prior, it helps if you do, but you don't have to. You have to have the calling. And I know people will say it's a career or this or that, but more so for doulas because we're not paid for by insurance. This is private pay. If you're an end-of-life doula, you are your own boss. You bring in your own business. You come up with your own pricing, your own marketing, and so on. That's part of the con. And yes, there are end-of-life doulas like Anna Adams, the founder of the International Life Movement. She'll be mentioned, well, not her, but the International School is going to be mentioned down below. But she works for 2 separate hospice agencies, part-time each, and runs the International Life Movement and is an end-of-life doula. I don't know how she has the time. And runs a personal care home. I'm just flabbergasted as to how she fits it in every day. She's an amazing individual. But most of them are non-medical support, which means that I want to try to find the word, an end-of-life doula that is the purest of them all, non-medical support. They're not going to give a bath. They're not going to change the adult brief. I'm not saying that some won't cross certain boundaries, and I'm not saying that's wrong. The non-judgmental channel, and I'm weird enough that even if I wasn't a nurse or any medical background whatsoever, I'm the type of a person that if I'm with somebody and they say give them a bath, I'd try to figure it out and give them a bath. It's a human decency type of thing to do. But if you're talking about scope of practice, I need to be blunt, and the National End of Life Alliance has a scope of practice, and down below is the link for the National End of Life Alliance, NEDA. But the scope of practice for end of life doulas is limited to the equivalent of a companion who's very educated if they're properly trained. And so, but some of us, some are CNAs, some are LPNs, and some like me are registered nurses, which mean that we can go above and beyond and not have to worry about a limited scope of practice. And we are a complement. One of the things that I've run into in Kentucky is some hospice agencies, when I talk to them, they hear that I'm a hospice nurse, I wrote hospice books, etc. And all of a sudden they feel threatened, or at least that's how they come across to me. And it's like, I'm trying to refer business to you because I don't do what you do. It's not that I can't, but I don't have a license. I mean, we talk about a license to do, I'm not talking about the RN license. I'm talking about a license to operate in the state as a hospice provider. I don't have that license, and I'm not planning on it. So I'm there to try to refer business to them and complement them. And that's what a good end of life doula does. We complement palliative care, we complement hospice care, we complement home health, we complement the different people coming into the environment. And so we are the bridge. We're providing that physical presence, whether there's telehealth or not, and the holistic care. So it's a natural partnership. And I'm sure part of the reason that I'm doing this, even though the article is going to be online, my YouTube audience is different than my CompassionCrossing.info audience. But on the same token, I have a growing number of end-of-life doulas who's following my own journey as an end-of-life doula. And I cannot encourage you, I do want to go on one rabbit trail before I come up back to the end-of-life doulas following me. For those end-of-life doulas that are following this channel, I can't stress enough, get out there in the community. Friday, September 12th, I was out there. The date that that article was published, I shouldn't gotta watch where I'm pointing. The date this article was published, I went to, it was Living Through the Ages. It was a senior health fair at the Madison County Library in Richmond. And they had 13, I think it was 13 different vendors. I didn't have a table. At first, I was actually mad at myself for not finding out about it soon enough to order to try to have a table. But when I got finished and I left there, it was actually, in a way, I'm glad I didn't have a table. Not that it was a bad event. Hear me out. I went, and I'm weird because I knelt before every booth. They didn't have chairs. And I believe I'm getting on eye level. And I got on eye level because most of the people were sitting at the other end of the table. And for everyone, I went through all the business cards, including my spares, and I handed my business card to everyone. And I had the chance to talk to them and ask them, what do they do? What do they do differently than some of the others there? Because there were several home health agencies that were there. How I might refer business to them. And here's what I do. And it was a wonderful time. I had a home health agency ask me, would they reach out to me to help somebody who's transitioning? Now we have to watch definition of words. We have to watch definition of words. For me, end of life transitioning is somebody's going through the first stage of the two stages of dying, transitioning and active dying. But I also call myself a life transition coach. And if somebody gets, they're in their 30s and they get a diagnosis of diabetes type 2, that's a transition. So I wanted to find out, what does transitioning mean to them? always have a curious mind, ask questions. And they shared that that they have patients who are going downhill, who may be heading to the transitioning phase of the dying process, but are in denial for hospice and palliative care, or their families in denial. And I said, if not me, then another doula. We would be perfect for this because we're an independent source where we could be sharing them. This is what we're seeing. And for me, because of my hospice and palliative care background, I can actually give a prognosis. Nurses cannot give a diagnosis, but a properly trained hospice nurse can give a prognosis, often better than most doctors, because it's not based on lab values, x-rays, MRIs, etc. It's based on interviewing and observation, including all senses, the sense of smell too. Um, but I would be wonderful for that. And I had a chance to talk to an elder law attorney who they forgot that we actually gave them business. That part was humorous. But I had a lengthy conversation with them. Would I be interested in participating in a dementia group? Would I be interested in participating in helping out a local Berea enrichment church for their seniors? And it's like, yes, yes. They gave me a name and a person to contact who I reached out to Friday. They're going to follow up this week. Get out there in your community. Now, getting back to the end of life doulas for this, um, we are the bridge. We are the continuum of care. We are the continuity of care. So we could provide that comprehensive structure. And if hospice providers wake up that we are trusted friends that have everyone's best interest at heart, what beautiful partnerships. Everyone's going to bloom. Everyone's going to grow from this. And that is my hope. That is my desire. Now, let me go back to part of the solution for the training. And I mentioned that I mentioned Anna Adams. She's the founder of the International Dual Life Movement. In this particular, some articles I name only IDLM, others I name like two or three. I wanted to be a little bit more comprehensive of doula schools in this coverage as I'm doing my own homework in terms of like what's good out there. And I do my best not to name the ones I question. As a side note, I do want you, if you're not yet certified, question. I was going through Facebook the other day, participating in a number of end of life hospice dementia Facebook groups, and you're just scrolling for like, did I miss anything? And there was a certification course saying that they were accredited. They're not, to become an end of life doula for $67. If I knew of non-copyrighted music that I could play right now, oh my word, $67. While that's inexpensive and most people should be able to afford that, it's slightly more than my books, but um, I don't know. I'm like, especially when they're saying it's certified accredited when it's not. But these schools, there's no accredited school, including what I'm listing. But these schools that I'm listing have a track record. So the International Life Movement, there's also INELDA. I know of only one Christian-based end of life doula school, and that's Laurel Nicholson's. And I've been to a number of her free Zoom sessions and talked to some of her students to get a feel for her program, and she does a good job. And I know that, Casey, I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name, but she has the Death Doula School. I did have a phone Zoom conversation. I think it was on let me see, go back September 10th with Casey. Um, just a tidbit from that my Zoom call with Casey. That was on Wednesday, September 10th. And by the way, Anna, if you're watching this, Casey did say she refers people to IDLM because she doesn't do live training. Hers are pre-recorded. But she was sharing, and this tidbit is for those looking for certification. Casey shared that some hospice agencies are offering free doula training for volunteers. Now that sounds wonderful. And considering that it's a hospice agency, you would think that it would be comprehensive. The fine print that you, my viewer, please, please be careful about. She shared there are hospice agencies that are telling their volunteers, if you take our doula training, you can never charge anyone for your doula services. Never. I want to be very clear. This is not just when you're a companion volunteer. This is never. I share that because from an ethical standpoint, I'm a strong believer in work ethic and ethics overall. I was a companion volunteer. I stopped for Hospice Care Plus out of Richmond. They cover Madison County and several surrounding counties. And I had one family where I was a companion volunteer. Most of my volunteer time was a receptionist, which was fine. That family never knew I was an end-of-life doula. And I did my best, by the way, if you watched the one video, I did my best not even to disclose I was a nurse, but sadly, the Hospice Care Plus didn't go over what a volunteer is, and the spouse asked lots of questions, which were very valid and good, but it just awkward because they should have been explained what a volunteer is, and that would have allowed me to be, I'm a nobody, which I don't mind being, by the way. So, but Casey shared that there are hospice agencies saying that if you take our free doula training, you can never charge for your end-of-life doula services, meaning that like if you're a companion volunteer, you should not be charging. You should not be saying, oh, by the way, I have my own business. I could see you on the side after this volunteer business. That's unethical. That is unethical. However, let's say you want to build your business and you're going to have people that aren't even using that hospice agency. Shouldn't you be allowed to set a rate even if it's sliding scale? Anyway, sad times. Then there's the National End of Life Alliance. Now, the National End of Life Alliance does not have a school, but they have a way through certification called micro-credentialing. There's pros and cons to that because you do self-study, and they have a free self-study guide, but it's not as comprehensive as the four others listed that are actual schools. And so we're coming to a close. You'll have a link to this in the description below for this particular article that will be published by the time that you see this video. But in ending, hospice, whether they go the telehealth route or not, is in crisis. Hospice is needed. Hospice is valuable. I had several conversations this past week with people who understood that early adoption of hospice, we're talking about 6 months, and I was sharing with the one person, I'd actually be the nurse trying to get somebody admitted when they have 9 months and arguing why and getting them on board. I'd rather see them admitted early as possible and push the envelope for early. Because the research is out there that somebody who has started hospice as early as 6 months, that their life will be extended by as much as close to, I should say, as close as to 30 days. Imagine adding an entire month to your life that's based on quality that you define, not the government, not in the hospital, you and your power of attorney. Oh, before I forget, just so you know, this gets into the resource. This goes into the case for, this is another article by Hospice News that came out this year. Again, they're pushing for telehealth. This talks about the staffing shortage, the 35% that's message. We have a nursing shortage. This goes over by state. And then I have a link to the different schools that were mentioned. But there's a solution out there that I hope that if you are a hospice administrator, you're a hospice executive, you have anybody with any say, or you know those that have a say in your hospice agency, get them to work with end-of-life doulas. If you're in Kentucky, whether you're Hospice Care Plus, Bluegrass Care, Navigators, Hesperus Health, Hospice of Cumberland, Hospice East, and I don't have all the Kentucky Hospices agencies memorized, reach out to me. I'm willing to work with you. And no, I can't go on site throughout all of Kentucky, but just so that you know, my viewer, I'm already in conversation with somebody with the potential where I maybe, keyword, I don't know anything beyond today, but I might be the end of life doula for a person that if they remain where they're at today, they're a 3.5 hour one-way drive, 7 hours round trip from where I live. And if they move to the closest bigger city, it's still 2 hours, well, 4 hours round trip for me, but I still might be the person going out. So case by case, I can travel depending on the circumstance. But get out there, make contacts with end of life doulas in your geographic area. Partner with schools who are training people to say, we have a need in this geographic area. Do you have anybody? There's a solution out there for the staffing shortage that makes everybody a winner. Thank you for your time. Take care. God bless.